And the December runoff elections were just simply notorious for these sorts of low turnout. And because you think about it, we would have a November election for president or governor, and everyone would think it was done. And people like Mark Leonard would tell you, he would try to say to them, to his supporters, no, look, you got to vote again in December. And they say, no, you've already won. No, there's another election. So it was really, really hard to get people to turn out in that December election. It's the middle of holidays, students are having exams. And so not only was the voter turnout low in December, but it was very skewed to a certain side of the electorate. The people who didn't turn out in December were overwhelmingly minority voters, young voters, poor people. The voters who turned out in December were, compared to the overall San Francisco electorate, were overwhelmingly whiter, wealthier, and more conservative. So it was just a matter of voter turnout dropping the same everywhere, but it really skewed the electorate in a certain way. In addition, people, saw some of the runoff elections and how they got really nasty and negative because it's you against me, and I can win as easily by driving voters away from you as by attracting them to me, so I go negative. And the San Francisco Ethics Commission actually did a study showing that independent expenditures, for example, increased by 4 times in the December runoff elections because the money interests just waited to see who was left at the top 2, and then they would just pour their money behind either the candidate they wanted or just beat the heck out of the candidate they didn't want. And so this became a regular feature of San Francisco elections. So we proposed at the time, look, we don't have to do this in this fashion anymore. We could instead use this instant runoff voting, as we called it at the time. It's now been changed to ranked choice voting. It's a method that's been used for decades in places like Ireland, Australia. Other places like the Academy Awards have been using it for non-governmental elections. And so it was a tried and true. Robert's Rules of Orders recommends this method as one to fulfill majority mandates and majority rule. And so we said to some of the supervisors, look, we could try this. And it was raised, it was discussed, it was batted back and forth. And as a result of this, to make a long story short, it ended up on the ballot in March of 2002. San Francisco voters voted for it in favor of it, I think it was 56 to 44%. Then it took a couple of years to implement it. We had our first election in 2004. There was a lot of political interference in the implementation process because certain powerful interests in this city did not want to see it implemented, including the Chamber of Commerce, San Francisco Chronicle, and others who basically have been opposed to this from the beginning. And so finally we got it implemented in 2004, and we've been using it ever since. We've had 8 elections now. In 2004, both supervisorial and citywide elections, and by and large, I think it's working pretty well. But the one thing that's important to understand when it comes to electoral systems is that there is no perfect system. There are pros and cons to any method that you use, whether it's instant runoff ranked choice voting, a December election, or some have proposed a June-November election, or a September-November election, as some are talking about, approval voting. There are pros and cons to any of these methods. And so, a lot of the criticisms being put out there right now about ranked choice voting sound rather harsh in a certain light. But what you have to realize is that if they repeal ranked choice voting, they have to replace it with something. And the methods that are out there that it could be replaced with are, in my view, worse than anything that's any downside to ranked choice voting. And so I think you have to really look at it from that pro and con point of view, and not just simply, there are a certain number of exhausted ballots, not all like exhausted ballots. Well, with December runoffs, we had what I call exhausted voters. Voters who just didn't come back for the second election. In fact, far more voters didn't come back for the second election in December than have their ballots exhaust with ranked choice voting. And so that's where, some of the researchers that's going on right now, they're sort of comparing ranked choice voting to perfection. And saying, oh, compared to perfection, it doesn't measure up. Well, nothing measures up compared to perfection. But when you start comparing to other methods, that's where I think it actually works out pretty well. So what has been the impact of ranked choice voting? I'll just give you a few of some of the things that I find quite impressive. Since ranked choice voting has been used in 2004, we've seen a doubling of the number of racial and ethnic minorities elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. It used to be 4, now there's 8. We've seen a quadrupling of the number of Asian Americans elected to the Board of Supervisors. We now have our first Chinese American mayor. Over in Oakland, they also have their first Chinese-American mayor. In fact, Jean Quan is the first Asian-American woman to be elected mayor of a major city, and she did it defeating the old power broker, Don Parada, who outspent her 4-1 because she built a better grassroots campaign and attracted the second and third rankings from the supporters of more candidates than Don Parada did. It's also a wide cross-section of San Francisco is well represented on the Board of Supervisors, including the gay lesbian community, moderates, liberals, progressives, even conservatives. We have conservatives on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. With ranked choice voting, as well as public financing of campaigns, which I also was very involved in the effort to bring that to San Francisco, we've elected one of the most representative city governments in the United States. 8 out of 11 of the members of the Board of Supervisors are racial minorities. That's the highest of any major city, New York, LA, in the United States. Voters are handling ranked choice voting pretty well. 99.6% of voters cast valid ballots in the 2011 mayor election. That means 4 out of 1,000 voters messed up their ballot and it couldn't be counted. That's actually quite low. School board races in San Francisco, for example, have a much higher rate in some years of invalid ballot rates than RCV has had. 73% of voters in the mayor election used all 3 of their rankings. I thought I was going to use 7 minutes of time.
Yeah, you have 6.5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. 11% used 2 of their rankings. There's only been 3 exit polls done of ranked choice voting, and 2 of them by San Francisco State show that 87% of voters say they understand ranked choice voting. Another one by Asian Law Caucus had similar numbers. San Francisco voters have saved approximately $70 million since we began using ranked choice voting. In just this mayor election alone last year, we saved about $3 million.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
You'll have plenty of time to get back to that stuff, I guarantee it.